So, as folks are starting to meander back to your desks, we're going to segue into the next session. It's 2:30 Eastern, 11:30 Pacific. We're going to give you a little preview of some other workshops that we would like to do throughout the remainder of 2021. Do we have Shasta back?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I was looking at my agenda, sorry. So in this session, we will be joined by John Welch. Many of you know him. He's been a longtime ally of NATHPO, and we're looking forward to continuing our partnership there. He's also with Simon Fraser University, and he has invited a colleague of his from Archaeology Southwest to talk to you guys about one of the bullet points here. And then Nazune Menka is also joining us from the UC Berkeley School of Law. It turns out that she has had an idea that I had also been talking to Wes about independently. So for all of these topics here, what we're going to do is give you an overview of the status up to this point, and try to leave lots of time for questions and discussion at the end. We sent out a pre-conference survey to THPOs and tribal folks who had registered. So if you registered within the past week or so, you wouldn't have gotten that from us. So we're going to run a version of that live. Shasta's going to help us look like we know what we're doing with technology, to ask you a couple of questions to respond to during the session. And I will let John and Stacy and Nazune introduce themselves further I think I'm going to do it when we get to your item. So first, I'm going to talk about the Park Service THPO application. We initially had Karen Wild, the acting THPO program manager there, in this session to talk to you guys about that, and she had to change times. So just briefly, all I really want to tell you about that is I had been talking to Jamie Lee Marks before she went out on maternity leave, and then before she changed positions, about what we could do to improve the support that they offer for this. She's got some YouTube videos of herself giving presentations on it, and she's tried to break the application down into more digestible pieces and things that she learned in her time in that position that were helpful to aspiring THPOs to get that completed, because it's a real bear. And apparently the application itself can't be changed. That was my first question. So that is something that will remain in their purview. They are in charge of that, the Park Service is. But what can we do as NATHPO to make that easier for you guys to do, to work with the Park Service on doing that? And Jamie Lee did an in-person workshop with our newly retired board member, Michonne Eben, from the Western region in Nevada, first week of March of last year, before everything shut down, on this topic to help people get the application done. And that had huge success. So that was also working with Gary Cantley in the region at BIA. And that's one thing we would like to pick back up again and try to look at how we can translate that into something that would be useful in a virtual format. Because I think not just during this time, but even when things return to normal or whatever that's going to be, obviously there's a lot of benefits to having things available virtually. So that's really all I have to say about that at this point. And then the THPO Toolkit is something that predates me at NATHPO. It was offered as a pre-conference workshop in 2018. And so for this one, we just decided to revisit it sort of at this level. John was involved intimately in the creation of the original toolkit. And so I reached out to him to talk about that. But then as far as what we want to do moving forward, we want to update it. We want to figure out how it can be the most useful product for you. So I'm going to turn it over to John to talk about that. And then we can segue into Stacy talking about their ARPA initiative. John.
Thanks so much, Valerie, and hello, everybody. Sorry that we can't be sharing some of the same space together, but in any case, it's kind of a thrill for me to be back involved in any kind of NATHPO business. As Valerie mentioned, I'm sort of an artifact of NATHPO myself. My involvement in tribal historic preservation actually precedes NATHPO and the THPOs. Wonderful to see Nicholas Lawlick on the NATHPO board. And have White Mountain re-represented. White Mountain Apache Tribe was an original member of the NATHPO board that I did my best to represent from 1997-ish till I left that position to make way for younger, smarter, better representatives for the tribe in the form of Mark Altaha and Nick Lawlick. And moved from there, as Valerie kindly mentioned, to Simon Fraser University, where I'm a professor. And I'm also a principal at Archaeology Southwest, along with my great colleague, Stacy Ryan here. And so, yes, I'll be talking a little bit about the history of the THPO toolkit that started in 2013, and mentioning sort of how we got ourselves in the place of having a number of different assets that are available for use. And as I told Valerie in preparing for this, like the history of the THPO toolkit is interesting, but ultimately irrelevant. Like what matters is what we do with it and for THPO initiatives from here. How can we remobilize the assets that we've put together? When I'm done with that, then I'm going to briefly introduce the other part of the initiative that's coming out of Archaeology Southwest and the Bureau of Indian Affairs Western Region, led by Gary Cantley, our ARPA initiative. And then just say a few words about how we developed that initiative and how it came to be, and then turn over the bulk of that presentation to Stacy. So the one question, Valerie, I'm hoping could be answered is whether or not it's possible for me to share my screen. And also, while we're thinking about that, whether I should present those initial results from the survey or we should hold off on that.
I'm muted. If you go to the bottom, there's a mute, a stop video, security, and should be a share screen.
Now it looks like I'm enabled. That's great.
Okay.
Before it was saying I needed some additional.
Oh, sorry about that. To make you.
It's okay. It worked out fine.
And then I believe Shasta has a poll ready to run those couple of questions when you give us the high sign. Yep.
Terrific. So can folks see a screen? I'm afraid me doing this has muddled things a little bit for me, but can folks see a screen that talks about the THPO toolkit?
Perfect.
Great. So this is, again, the historical perspective on how we got into this. This started off as the idea of making it so that primarily newer THPOs would have a readily accessible bundle of information that they could go to for what we call kind of a quick start guide, immediate information available to them to get their offices up and running. And we enlisted help from this great advisory board. Well, we got a grant, first of all, from the National Park Service that was sponsored by Narragansett and John Brown. Thanks very much. Terrific support there. And then enlisted advice from Joe and James at the Park Service at the time, and used opportunities in the NATHPO annual conference to meet with the membership and the attendees, but also more intensively with a group of trusted advisors. Shane Anton and Christy Baker, John Brown, Michonne, Evan, Patty Garcia, Marcos, Guerrero, and Edith Leoso, who really helped come up with kind of the scheme that would be unfolding through this. And ultimately, we decided that the most valuable type of training was going to occur as a result of getting together as part of the annual meeting and spending what we first thought of, well, let's try to do it for 3 or even 4 days. That became impractical. And so we started off at kind of a day and a half and ultimately kind of whittled it down to a day. That seemed like it was going to work best. Pretty ambitious to try to squeeze this much information in. Here's the sort of 8 modules that we have information on, a bunch of assets kind of lurking behind the scenes on this. You know, the first one being just an introduction to what we were doing with the toolkit, a broad overview of historic preservation, and most especially how tribes fit into the federal historic preservation program. The third module being dedicated to the specific challenges facing THPOs, lack of funding, and different kinds of jurisdiction, and the huge amount of variation in terms of tribal management structures and capacities, and how to transform those challenges into opportunities on the base for thinking strategically for the creation and deployment of office specific assets, of THPO specific assets. Then, kind of modules 4, 5, 6, and 7 really being the guts of the THPO responsibilities. 4 focused on planning, administration, and management functions. 5 emphasizing the survey, inventory, and national register functions. The 6th element being the one thing that really is shared across pretty much every tribal historic preservation office, or virtually every, I should say, participation in Section 106 compliance on tribal lands. The 7th module emphasizing—
Okay, I love you.
Emphasizing, love you too.
We love you too.
I didn't know that I was going to spark this kind of a response, but I'm very grateful to have it. And the 7th really focused on the outreach part of it, like what THPOs can do to influence land management and historic preservation, cultural site conservation beyond their tribal boundaries. And the last module, providing additional strategic perspectives on the critical importance of tribal sovereignty and the ways that THPOs can contribute to tribal sovereignty. So that was how we structured the toolkit and set it really kind of up. Now, just to review a little bit, the mission really was to develop training and assets, information assets for tribal representatives that were doing historic preservation, a practical exercise. We wanted to use the training to package and deliver knowledge and perspective essential to THPOs, to provide THPOs and tribal leaders that wanted to sit in, because we found out that a lot of individual tribal leaders, elected leaders, sometimes appointed leaders too, wanted to be involved, understand what THPOs were doing, where their potentials lie, where there were challenges being met, and how they could further the project of tribal sovereignty. And we also wanted to find ways to optimize existing funding, networks, and community resources. We quickly understood something that should be obvious to everybody, is that within such an august and amazing group that you've got, with 564 folks registered for this conference, there's a huge amount of knowledge and expertise that's available in this network of tribal historic preservation. And so what can you do to optimize that and make it available? So with that as the background of where we were, and the trainings were either formulated or delivered between 2013 and 2018. I think they've been in hiatus since then. Tom Gates did the second round of trainings after I sort of launched him. And then that's really it for the history. So for today, we wanted to make sure folks were aware of this bundle of assets, identify on the basis of where we are learning from you all the participants, where your ideas and interests are, how we should potentially remobilize the idea of a toolkit and the existing assets, updated and modified for current needs. We've got just a couple of goals that I'll try out there, or a couple of ideas for how those could be done. One is an initial conversation ongoing with the Harvard Project on American Indian Economic Development to build one of their toolboxes. They've been very successful in creating, especially a focus on COVID-related response toolboxes for tribal governments, but they have been favorably inclined to hear more about the possibility of a tribal culture perpetuation toolbox that they would then sponsor and host on their website if NATHPO was interested in doing something like that. And then the other option that's worthy of discussion, because it's already sort of been tried and we're in a way in the process of it, is conference online training sessions, developing maybe more specific modules to serve needs and interests there. Now, Valerie, should I put up the results of our 32-person responses to the initial surveys, or should we delay on that?
You're muted, Valerie.
Thank you. If you could maybe just talk about general trends. 32 people responded to the online survey in advance of the conference. Thank you very much for that. Those of you who did. So maybe if you just want to say, the majority of people were interested in whichever topic. And I will say that it looks like most of you on a scale of 1 to 5 checked 4 for your experience with NHPA, which is good. And we also asked the same questions about NAGPRO, which we'll get into tomorrow in the first session. I'm struggling to see where the majority of answers were. It's kind of unclear.
Yeah, a nice splay distribution, that is,
Yeah.
Pretty varied interests. This isn't a statistically sort of representative sampling or anything like this. It's just a quick, reality check from 32 respondents regarding what would be useful by way of training. But clearly folks wanted to learn more about everything from consultation and compliance to how NHPA interfaces with NEPA. Those, stand out as major efforts, but of course there was also some significant interest in just having more nuts and bolts in training and exposure to information and best practice for Section 106 compliance and for the other elements of THPO functions.
Yeah, so there's a couple of different things that I think we want to be mindful of as we have discussions about picking this back up again. And that is one is the wide range of experience levels that exist. So I've heard from folks, even among our board, that some people ended up in their position by being a tribal member in the right or wrong place at the right or wrong time, depending on how you look at it. And then we've got non-native people with advanced degrees and everywhere along the spectrum. So there's needs that everyone has. Do we take a tiered approach to offering these materials? It's one thing that I think we need to consider. And then also one of our plans that has not yet come to fruition is a member forum through the website, a member management software platform, so that you guys can manage your own contact information for one thing, but also to provide an online community where you can talk to each other and learn from each other, because I get a lot of questions that I certainly don't know the answers to, but one of you out there surely does. And so how do we connect you guys and help that to happen as well? So those are a couple of things to keep in mind moving forward too. And we look forward to considering ways that we can involve your input on shaping this. So we did want to run a couple of survey questions here and have you respond to them live, so we can see if these trends repeat. Jess is going to help us with that.
So that's my cue to launch the poll.
Cute.
Okay, so I'm going to launch this poll, which means that those of you who are not really paying that much attention right now need to start paying attention. And the way I get you to pay attention is I've got this little desktop toy, and it's a screaming goat. So I'm going to turn on my video for a second, even though I'm not spotlighted. So maybe you can see, if you're looking at my little square, you can see my screaming goat. And I'm gonna play the screaming goat to get your attention if you're not already listening. So stand by. So there you go. If you just heard that, that means look at your screen and start taking the poll. And you can choose more than one here. And so this is the same question that we had in the slide, with the 32 respondents. And Valerie, Letitia from Pasquenta had asked how many people out of 32, out of how many people were able to take the survey total? It was our whole membership, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I sent it to all tribal conference registrants from about 2 weeks ago, but also all of our, the whole THPO list that I have. So quite a few. 100.
So we've got about 38% of people voted so far. I'm going to give it a little bit more. And I know that not everybody in the conference is a THPO or works for a tribe, but don't let that necessarily stop you, because it's also interesting to see if there are agency people who feel like they need more of this kind of training. And honestly, I feel like if we have agency folks coming and getting their training from the tribal perspective on things, that's going to make them better at their jobs.
That's a good point, Jessa.
And so, and Letitia says she doesn't see the poll, and I'm not sure why that would be. Oh, now it says it disappeared. I haven't ended it, so if it's not showing up for you, I don't know if maybe there's different ways this comes up, whether you're on a phone or a tablet, or if you're using the Zoom app versus using the website. But we've got about 56% of people. Oh, and I got to thank you for the comment about the agency folks. So yeah, I mean, and we may be able to refine this at some point in the future where, and actually, I mean, that may have been in part of the poll, but the original poll, I don't know, but where we can ask people, who are you? And then we can filter the results depending on whether you work for a tribe, whether you work for an agency, if you're a student. All right, so we're coming up on almost 3 minutes here, so I'm going to go ahead and 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, closed. Okay, now I'm going to share the results.
Consultation and compliance by a nose.
Yeah, so you guys can see all the results. And John, I don't know if you want to talk about those, or Nazune or Stacy or Valerie, but let me know when you want me to stop sharing the results so you can go back to your slides.
Well, I want to say that it's extremely helpful. Great to see volumes of interest in almost all of the topics there. I want to reaffirm something that Shasta just said, which is that it seems to me that there's incredible value and appetite in the next generation of federal agency staff members in learning directly from tribal experience of and in historic preservation, in the Federal Historic Preservation Program, that it's our agency colleagues that need to hear directly from tribal representatives about their ideas of proper conduct, of consultation and compliance, and how they can better support THPOs and tribes more generally in participation in their agency programs. So vital not to have too firm of a line. And at the same time, the only other comment I had is one of the key takeaway lessons from our experience and the feedback that we got on the offerings from the THPO Toolkit trainings that we actually did was that sure, the trainers were useful and it was great to have access to all this information, but what most of the participants appreciated the most was the opportunities to hear directly from their colleagues about how they were solving in real time the actual problems and issues in being an effective THPO in each one of these program or functional areas. And so the idea of having more opportunities for networking and forum creation, this kind of thing, seems to me to be exactly on point.
And John, we are sharing, saving the results of the poll, so I can share those out when we're done. And are you ready for me to stop sharing the results?
Yes.
Okay.
Nicely done, Shasta.
It's, you know
Good.
what, don't get too excited. It's once you know how to do it, it's really not that hard.
Sometimes ignorance is a wonderful thing. You just look in awe.
You know, I agree with you. And I have an ex-boyfriend who taught me that if you just say you don't know how to do something, then your girlfriend will be like, fine, I'll just do it.
Emphasis on the X there.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Okay, muting now.
Well, it does look really cool. And I also want to say as a teaser that we're doing a slightly different version of a poll in the 4 o'clock session that we're really excited about. So if you haven't already, please plan to join us for then. You can refill your mug as needed. So with that, we're going to turn it over to Stacy Ryan to talk a little bit about an initiative that John had asked if we could have a few minutes for, and I'm happy to provide that.
Actually going to tease Stacy up with just another brief excursion into how we got into the BIA Archaeology Southwest ARPA initiative. I'm still seeing the poll on my screen. Is that true for other folks?
Can you close out of it? Just click the X.
I don't think I have that capacity. Shall I try it?
It shouldn't be showing. Yeah, it should give you a close option, but.
Well, are folks able to see my screen?
Yes.
Oh, good. Then it's just for me, so that doesn't matter. Anyway, so here's what I want to say about this before handing it off to Stacy, and that is that there's been 2 key drivers in our interest in this still fairly new movement to re-engage with the issue of archaeological resource crime. That is that the federal top-down, stand by tribes, we got this, we're going to take care of it. The history of doing Archaeological Resource Protection Act implementation has not been effective on tribal lands. There's been a very, very low incidence of concerted investigations and prosecutions of ARPA violations or NATHPO violations directly tied to tribal lands, which is really unfortunate given that laws really came out of experiences on tribal lands and the voices of tribal people to do a better job of taking care of these places. But somehow it has never translated into rigorous, intensive prosecutions on Indian lands. And so with leadership from Gary Cantley, inveterate leadership, long-term leadership from Gary Cantley at the Western Region Office of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, there's a partnership that's set up between his office and the Archaeology Southwest nonprofit organization that's headquartered in Tucson, Arizona, where Stacy and I are both currently sitting, although socially distanced in different rooms. And we have assembled this amazing team. Stacy and Gary really the leaders of it. but Bill Doley, the Archaeology Southwest president, Dusty Whiting, a retired federal law enforcement agent and BIA special investigator, Randy Ream, a retired assistant U.S. attorney, Frank Chavez, the current lead in the ARPA investigative unit of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. He's based in Albuquerque, and Shannon Cowell, who is just an ace all around, holding this initiative together. There's a few other folks involved, but that's been the focus of it. The goals, quite simply, and the vision for this program is to eliminate archaeological resource crime from the jurisdictions that are the most acutely impacted by this type of crimes and have been the least serviced in the past. And to do this through the prevention, detection, response to violations, and remediations of damages. So that's what we're up to. And we're accumulating assets and partners, and we are inviting all of you interested in participating, joining, reaping the benefits of this initiative, learning more about what we're up to and how you might be involved, or just take from what we are creating to become more familiar with it. And to make that possible, now I am yielding the floor to Stacy. So I'm going to stop sharing, and if we could enable Stacy to share, then she's going to provide some exciting additional news.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Valerie, and to everybody here for the opportunity to speak to you today about our new anti-looting campaign that we're pretty excited about. So we worked with a Native American-owned marketing firm to help us with our outreach strategy on this. And our consultants really opened our eyes to the fact that what we need to start is a movement. We need to have this movement to spread the word that archaeological resource crime is not going to be tolerated. And so our consultants came up with the name of the movement, which is Save History. And they built a website, which is the foundation of our movement, called savehistory.org. And I'd like to show you a few of the features of the site. I'm going to share my screen here. I will tell you that, can everybody see that? So I will tell you that I had hoped to debut our site during the conference today, but we did run into a delay that I just learned about a couple hours ago. So after I tell you about this, I will share, there's our Tucson train. I will share a link to a Google sheet in the chat box. And if you'd like us to contact you and send you some more information about this campaign and let you know when the site is live, go ahead and sign up on that. So just a short little tour of the Save History site, which this is the demo site. It will eventually be savehistory.org. And what we want to do with our messaging on here is to provide information, inform people that archaeological resource crime is a legal theft of tribal history, and that tribes are the traditional stewards and the original owners of archaeological resources, and that all Americans have a duty to protect these places and to report violations of the Archaeological Resources Protection Act. So we'd like to give our users some resources to learn more about the laws, about the places, and about the people who are impacted by these crimes. And we also want to give a call to action. So we have an opportunity for people to contact us through our 800 number, our toll-free number 833-NLOOT. That number is directed right to law enforcement, and people can share information if they see something that concerns them, or they can text. We also have a confidential tip line, which is on this website, and that also goes directly to law enforcement. And we are also asking people to share this information and to start conversations with their friends and family. And just share our message and really help us raise awareness about this issue. We invite people to contact us, especially if they have their own stories to share, or share just any kind of comments on how they think that the site might have the most impact. And we share stories from tribal stewards. You know, we think that especially younger adults really learn very quickly through the use of videos. We're going to feature short videos, 3 minutes to 8 minutes, and we will have people talking about why these places are important and why they should be protected. We'll also feature these videos on our stories page up here. And we have the latest news, which is our blog. And again, we're hoping that our blog page is going to feature a variety of voices to talk about the impacts of looting and vandalism. But we also want to use it to share good news, to talk about remediation efforts, protection efforts, new partnerships that were created, and also to talk about successful ARPA violations. So please do contact us if there is something that you think would fit well for us to share on this site. And we do have a contact us page on here. And anything that you submit through there will come directly to me. And I will get back to you as soon as possible on that. And we ask people to support and join the movement. And they can do this by putting in their email address and subscribing to our newsletter. We will have a monthly newsletter set up so we can keep people updated on what's going on and new stories to share. So when you do visit the site, please do sign up for our newsletter. And I want to show you very quickly our submit a tip page. And this is for people who are looking for information if they're not sure what an archaeological resource crime looks like, if they're not sure who to turn to report. So we give some basic information on here about what damaged sites look like, what looter behavior looks like, and then we have a reporting form. And this will go to a law enforcement agent. This does not come to me, and this is a confidential reporting form. So this was an effort of our whole team working with the marketing consultant, and we're hoping it should be live by tomorrow. And we also have a Facebook page. So please, if you're on Facebook, like us on Facebook and follow us and join in on the conversation. We want to hear everybody's voice on this important issue. Currently, we don't have very much on our page, but we're going to get everything going once the site launches. And again, I want to say, please feel free to contact us either through here when you get on the site, or I will also put my email address in the chat box. So we're really interested in getting your feedback and how we can best make an impact and combat this problem of looting and vandalism on tribal lands. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Stacy. We've actually been getting some questions coming in for you and John. Is this focused solely on sites located on federal land, or are all archaeological sites?
So the website is geared towards tribal lands. That's where our focus is for the ARPA initiative. However, if somebody does send us a report and they find out that it's on federal lands, the law enforcement agent will make sure that that information is given to the right agency. And there are maybe times too when we'll be called upon by other federal agencies to provide some kind of assistance.
Okay, thank you. And then one before that, actually, I've been curious about this too. This is a good idea. Is there some sort of curriculum or information to share with children? This perspective needs to be instilled at an early age. And actually had sent a couple of messages to a couple of our members over Thanksgiving too. I have a kindergartner, and resources that explain things that they need to know at this age are hard to find.
So I agree with you wholeheartedly. It seems like everybody I've had a conversation with who works on tribal lands, and we've talked about this problem, has said that that is the key, is the early education in getting this message of respect and the importance of ancestral places into a curriculum. We do not have anything like that for children. Gary Cantley does have a youth activity guide that is distributed through, I think, libraries and other agencies that are on tribal lands. But Save History, the site itself, is not going to have any activities for people under age of 18.
Okay. And what was the web address again? Sally wants to know.
www.savehistory.org. And we're hoping it'll be live by tomorrow. Right now, you're not going to see anything. And I will put it in the chat box.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and then as I get my bracelet caught in my hair, actually wanted to remind everybody to go and like us on Facebook as well. You reminded me of that. Thank you. What a great initiative there. So now we're going to turn it over to Nazune Menka to talk about her idea for a tribal culture resources law handbook and or workshop. And as I said, this is something that I had asked Wes about the possibility of as well, since I don't think it's something that exists. And Olaf Armour from NOAA, if you're still on, your underwater cultural resources law study and gap analysis is what made me think of that. And so I think that something like that would be great to have with regard to tribal cultural resources law. So I will let Nazune talk a little bit more about that with you guys. And then we have another question that we're going to ask you to respond to.
So actually, I really am interested in that gap analysis. So if someone can share that, that would be great.
Oh, yeah.
Ina base Valerie, minu gatfitro hutan Islan, Lumbee Islan, Nazune Menka Islan. Thank you, Valerie. My name is Nazune Menka. I am of the Koyunkan Athabascan people, and I'm also Lumbee from North Carolina. I am currently serving as a Tribal Cultural Resources Policy Fellow at UC Berkeley School of Law. So this project is actually grant funded through the Native American Heritage Commission, which is an arm of the state of California government. And its intent is to assist California tribes in protecting tribal cultural resources, build tribal capacity to protect those resources themselves. So the project itself is not meant to provide legal counsel or anything of that nature. However, what we are hoping to do and what we've been learning through our outreach, right, to tribal communities, to tribal leaders, to THPOs, and I've seen several of you in other meetings. And so I'm really honored to be here with you today because of the work that you guys do. And as Walter Echohawk said, you know, this is human rights work and it's vitally important. And, you know, we're undergoing a, you know, somewhat of a cultural renaissance. And it's a wonderful time to be doing this good work. And I'm really appreciative of the energy and effort that you guys maintain to do this work. So the project initial phases, as any project that is done in Indian country should do, is to see what does the tribal community need, right? And so I've been doing listening sessions, I've been reaching out individually, focusing obviously on California tribes. However, as you guys know, there are several federal laws that tribes and THPOs can use to advocate for protection of tribal cultural resources. However, as Wes and Valerie and I have discussed, those are not, you know, found in, you know, a nice handbook in one place, right? So we're constantly kind of grasping at straws, trying to figure out what's the best strategy for this argument, right? Or, you know, what should I include in this comment letter? So while I will focus on some California laws as well, like California Environmental Quality Act, I really do want to hear from the THPO community about what laws you guys would like to see in a tribal cultural resource law handbook. You know, something that's for practitioners that really breaks things down in a simplistic way and allows you to utilize these legal resources to the best of your ability. I'm also interested in learning more about what kind of strategies the community would be interested in learning more about. I know that Valerie had talked pretty extensively about the need for lobbying at a previous meeting. And so, you know, lobbying as a strategy, comment writing as a strategy, you know, consultation and engagement, right? What does this, you know, government to government, nation to nation relationship look like? How do we become more proactive and advocate for our tribal cultural resources before the development comes? And so I think, you know, that consensus building, that relationship building is also really important. And so what I'm envisioning with the project is providing some, you know, webinar trainings, but also putting together this handbook. And so I really wanted to hear from you all. I know we have a question, another poll for you. If Shasta can, yes, case law, right? And so someone just instant messaged me privately about, you know, examples, right? I think there's a lot of instances where, you know, we don't have the case law, right, handy, because case law is housed behind, you know, Westlaw or LexisNexis, and these are paywalls and, you know, et cetera. So I think that providing something like a Cohen's Handbook chapter that is, you know, a little bit more advocacy related instead of just academic, I think is what I'm envisioning. And so, Shasta, are you there?
I am here. Are you ready for me to launch?
Yeah, so we're gonna put up a quick poll question, just some basic laws. I'm curious to see what your guys' thoughts are on what you would really like to see included in a handbook and where the focus should be. And this would help kind of identify essentially what the webinar and workshop could focus on when that comes to fruition. As Valerie said, we're hoping to have a, you know, a standalone, right, session on this kind of training in the future. And so your participation is greatly appreciated.
So, do I need to do the screaming goat again?
Maybe.
I don't know if you heard that.
Well, and also, you know, since we had Walter Echohawk speaking earlier, UNDRIP is not on here. In my mind, right, infusing UNDRIP and, you know, free, prior, and informed consent into everything that we're doing is kind of one of the things that I was trained to do. I was at the University of Arizona, so I recognize that train sound in Tucson, and I graduated from the Indigenous Peoples Law and Policy program and worked in clinic on Indigenous international human rights and wrote to, on behalf of the water protectors during Standing Rock during law school, and that was a really amazing experience. And so I have some of that experience, and I would love to include some of that in a handbook as well. So yeah, tribal case law examples, Melody said in the chat, we're want for more of those, right? Some of the legal databases, Westlaw has started incorporating a lot of tribal case law now. So, and Matthew Fletcher, who's at Michigan State University right now, he has a tribal law handbook, which is really great. And I believe he's got it on Turtle Talk. I'll see if I can find that and post it in the chat. And I do believe that we are actively, you know, trying to make tribal case law more readily available.
So we're up to 51%, which is very disappointing, people. That's an F if you're in college. So, let me scream the goat one more time.
Question about who can respond. Again, everyone, you know, we were thinking of THPOs and tribes with this, but agency folks, feel free to respond. We're inclusive.
Yeah, so like 20 more seconds, but I just like I said for the last one, I think that this is useful for the agency people too, because I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I find that a lot of agency people don't necessarily know the laws any better than the rest of us do, or sometimes actually we know them better than the rest of us do, than the rest of them do. Yeah, that's what I said. All right, that's 3 minutes. I'm going to end the poll. We got up to 58%. So let me share the results. All right.
Interesting. So I added tribal law as a first strategy is something that my colleague Robert Hershey has been advocating for a long time. And one of the really wonderful tribal resource codes that I read, it infused the creation story for the tribe along with the importance of, their traditional homelands, which were, described. And then also, the interconnectedness and the way that they view their worldview, right? And so all of that was enshrined in their code. It was codified, right? And so someone had posted earlier, like, how do we kind of like decolonize these laws? How do we decenter these laws, right? Well, I think one of the ways that we do that is to write our own tribal laws, and to do that in a unique way that is not just, copying and pasting RCRA into, case law or into tribal code, right? But to be innovative and to lead and to be who we are on paper, right? And I think that there's a lot of really great examples of how we can do that. And so I would love to focus heavily on tribal law, and I love that you guys are really focusing on that too. So hopefully I can get that full data from Shasta later. Do we have more questions? The chat is going too fast for me. Marion, thank you.
Do you want me to stop sharing the results? Are we ready to go back to the regular screen?
Yes.
All right. And somebody just asked about treaties. So I just put in the link to the government archives that has all of the treaties there. If you want to go through those and read them. Yeah, well, I know, maybe not, but a lot of them say the same, contain the same, broken promises. It gets very repetitive.
Well, I mean, that really great case that came out with McGirt from Oklahoma that Echo Hawk mentioned as well, I mean, it's Justice Gorsuch, I mean, his line, right? It's like, at the end of the Trail of Tears, there stood a promise, and today we're going to honor that promise. I mean, it was like, it's monumental, right, for the Supreme Court to utter those words and to recognize that the history of broken treaties is extremely real and that it needs to stop, and that's what they were doing that day, which was pretty fantastic. So that's some case law that I think will be helpful for those of us that might have treaties.
Just checking for extra questions here myself.
I'm laughing at Matthew's comment.
Ola would like to work with us on putting this together. I would welcome that. The Blue Lake THPO is on here. She helped put together a very large source book for the Society of California Archaeology in the early 2000s.
Wonderful, Janet.
If we can.
I believe I have Janet's email. So I'm gonna reach out to her.
Okay. Alex posted that, and now he's posted the answer.
And I'm going to circle back to the 1872 mining law that came up as a question in some of the other presentations, and that's something that needs attention. I know Alina brought it up, I think, and Kurt Dongoski brought it up. So that's
Renelda. It was Kurt and Renelda.
Renelda, that's right. That's right.
Go flat. Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely a lot of stuff that needs to be covered. So Nazune, how do we contact you to pepper you with all of the things we want you to do for us now?
I am putting my email in the chat. It's just nazune@berkeley.edu. And so feel free to email me, reach out. I will be keeping in touch with Valerie, and is Wes still on the call?
I am still here.
So hopefully, Wes, you and I can link up soon and have a discussion about how to move forward with this. And hopefully we can, if anybody is interested in engaging with us, I see a couple of people. I've got Marianne, I've got Janet's contact information.
This is Letitia from Pasquina. I just had a comment.
Mm-hmm.
When you were talking about the treaties and tribal consultation, one of the frustrating things is that when us tribal leaders are going to the table and traveling and using all of our funds to get to the table, we get to the table and we're not there with the leaders that can do anything for us. They always send somebody that is just listening, you know. And I think it's really important that we assert ourselves and say that we need to be at the table with the folks that can actually, you know, do the right work for us, not just somebody just listening. It's frustrating.
Right, and I think that goes back to what I was saying about being proactive about building relationships and reaching out to the leadership of agencies and development agencies even, you know, that are typically building in your community, right? And so making sure that you're not just coming in at the last minute, but you're developing that relationship continually. And I think that you know, the onus is also on, you know, those agencies. As, you know, Walter said with UNDRIP, there's several different things we can highlight about how to move forward with a human rights lens and how to bring that to the government and these agencies and say, this is the way we want to engage with you. And going back to the tribal laws of first strategy as well, that focus, right, you know, coming to them with your consultation policy, this is how you engage with us, not using how, you know, their consultation policies and starting to get them to, you know, have their consultation policies say, if you have a consultation policy you would like us to use, we'll defer to you. If not, here's how our process works, right? And so trying to reframe things, I think is where we need to go. And I think what Walter Echohawk was getting at.
This has been a really rich discussion. Thank you so much to all of our speakers and presenters and everyone who participated in this session. If you've got one last question, anyone throw it in the chat box. Otherwise, I believe you know how to reach us all at this point. And as I said, these are all topics that you will be hearing more from us on throughout the year as we start to put together some programming on this, not just to serve it up to you and say, is this what you need, but to involve you, to engage you in the creation of resources and materials that ideally will be what you need. So thank you again to our speakers for taking the time to share your expertise and your innovativeness with us. And we look forward to working with you all on these things moving forward.